Hey guys, welcome to the Primitive Podcast. I'm Kade Wilcox, your host. On today's episode, we have Russ Horn. Russ is the president of a local company here in Lubbock called CoNetrix. Really great episode. I loved his insights into and how he defines leadership and how he sees his role in leadership. I loved his insight into running and growing a fast-paced business while also having kids and protecting that time. This episode filled with a lot of rich stuff. So enjoy this, and thanks for listening along to the Primitive Podcast.
I found that when I create discipline in my life, I become a better person. I'm calmer, less stress.
For sure.
I remember when I started running marathons, one of the things I decided to do just as a discipline was quit Cokes. And I did it mainly for the discipline part, just to do something and be disciplined about it. And I haven't had a Coke since 2009.
That's incredible. Well, everyone, welcome to the Primitive Podcast. Russ, thanks for joining today. Really appreciate you being with us. So for those who don't know Russ Horn, tell us about your background and kind of a little bit about the work you do right now.
Sure. Well, I grew up in the small town of Robert Lee, Texas. Most people haven't heard of it. You don't drive through it unless you intend to. It has one light in it, but it blinks right in the middle of town. So we have more deer than we do people in that
That's
town.
good.
So I grew up
that could be a good thing, actually.
Yeah. I grew up in a small town, came to Lubbock for college, and have lived here ever since. Today, I serve as the president for CoNetrix, and we're a technology company. We actually have 4 subsidiary technology companies servicing companies throughout the U.S. and across the world.
Cool. And is it primarily financial institutions, or did I make that up?
Sure. So 2 of our companies focus primarily on financial institutions.
Okay.
And we service about 1,400 banks and credit unions throughout the U.S. So that's about a little over 20% of the banks in the U.S.
Okay. Wow, that's crazy. And like, what kind of technology, what does that work look like specifically?
Sure. So of our 4 companies, one of them focuses on, we write accounting software, and that's accountingware. And that's what started our business in 1977. So we still have that software today. Our second business is a traditional technology managed service provider. Our third business does security work, and this one's primarily for banks. So we'll do audits and pen tests or ethical hacking for financial institutions.
Wow.
And our last one is a SaaS offering, software as a service for financial institutions to help them with cybersecurity, information security, and compliance.
I like that, ethical hacking. So that's good. That's good. I immediately start thinking of Russia and all kinds of things when you say that. So boy, that would take us down some rabbit holes, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you said you've been with CoNetrix a long time, and you serve as the role as president. And so in your particular context, what does leadership look like, for you? What's your role in leadership? But then just broadly speaking, when you think of leadership, what kind of definition or what are the types of things that you see as to be the responsibility of leaders?
Sure. So, I think it really boils down to people. If you say, what is leadership? I'm going to say, well, it's all about people. But more practically, I think there's maybe 3 areas that are more practically on how you serve people as a leader. And I think the first one is really around mission, vision, core values of a company. I think employees of a company expect their leader to really instill the mission and the core values and to have really strong vision for them. For us, our 4 core values that we've held on to for years, one is integrity. And so our employees, our average employee's been with us 10 years, which is incredible, but they stay with us because we have these strong core values, and leadership really invests time into holding on to those core values, like integrity. We want to be a place that we're proud to work, and that we're honest, and we know we're working with other honest people, and we don't have to question that. And so we have to hold on to those core values. I think second is removing obstacles. So, if you're working on a team or in a project, periodically you run up into obstacles, whether it be working with another team, whether it be a resource that you need, whether it be a contract issue or whatever. And they're not really in your lane. They're not what you're passionate about, and they're not a good. They don't work well within your time to be super efficient. And so I think that's where you can hand that off to someone in a leadership role, and they can solve those problems for you. They can remove the obstacles. So I think good leaders help remove obstacles for various team members. And then finally, I think good leaders really invest back into the people and try to make the people successful. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I think of strong leaders in my past that I've been blessed to be around, and they care about me, and they want me to be successful, and they want me to grow, and they want to provide me opportunities, and they give me good feedback so that I can be better. And so I think that's what a leader does. So protecting the culture, removing obstacles, and growing and investing the people.
You've been in this leadership role for a long time. I mean, first of all, those are really great, very, very clear. And even as I was listening to you and trying to, take notes, I was reflecting on some of these things in my own leadership. What kind of challenges have you found in 15 years of leadership related to some of these things? For example, when you talk about mission and vision and core values, what are some of the challenges you faced, communicating those things or defining those things or whatever the case might be?
Sure. I think early on, we always hired with those core values and talked about them, but we didn't always implement them into everyday life within our work. And it was a couple of different people within our company that kind of challenged our thought on that. Hey, we need to start instilling these core values in everything that we do. And so now they're in our annual reviews. So when we do reviews, we're talking about those core values. Every time we have a company meeting, we're talking about those core values. When we send emails to the entire company, we try to reflect back on whatever the thought is, how does it fit with our core values, so that we're continuing to mention those core values and make decisions off of those core values, continuously, as opposed to just talking about them every so often or just letting them sit on the shelf.
Yeah, so everything's moving so fast. I mean, not just in leadership, but in the organization in general. And so I appreciate what you're saying about just the necessity of the consistency around the mission and the vision and the values. And really, you can't talk about those things too much, because we're focused on all these different things. And so I think I wrote down consistency. I mean, that's a really, really, really big one. I loved what you said about removing obstacles. Like I certainly, experience our fair share of problem solving, but in terms of removing obstacles so your team can be successful, like, do you do that organically or like what does that look like in your organization? I think that's a really powerful idea.
So I remember, I guess when I first kind of realized that was a key piece, one of the people that I work really well with, and he is an incredible professional and an asset, but he would come up on things that he didn't want to spend his time on, and really it wasn't efficient for him. And so he would just ask me, Russ, can you do this? Russ, can you do that? Can you do this for me? And so I started picking those up. But I realized through thinking through that process, what he was really doing is saying, this is how I can be efficient in the company. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to be doing. And these are other things that need to get done. But it's distracting me from being as good as I can be. And it really was clear to me then that what these are roadblocks or obstacles for him to be effective. And so it's leaders' jobs to find ways to remove those, and so that he can focus on what he's doing.
That's really powerful. I love that. How do you view failure? Again, you've been at this for a while, and so you can probably think through your career and your leadership and identify all kinds of things that maybe you wish you could hit the unwind button. And so when you think of failure, like, what do you think, and what's your approach to learning from it and all that good stuff?
Oh yeah, the rewind, wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be powerful.
Or redo. I think of a video game or something, and you wanna let me go back and start over. So.
That's how I start almost every apology to my wife. Can I start over? Like, could we pretend for a second that I wasn't an idiot? And that's good.
I think any person that has had success at all in their life, you're going to look and there are going to be multiple failures. And so I think it's how they handle and react to those failures that's important. I think of my mom. She's been a great example for me on this. She's the forever optimist. She's so positive and encouraging. I remember she was a teacher when I grew up, and so all of my friends, would have her. And they thought that she just put on this image in the classroom to be so positive. But when they'd come stay the night at my house, they're like, she's like this always. And I was like, I know. But I think there's some positive qualities that I've tried to pick up from on that. When you run into an issue, a problem, a failure, it can either knock you down, it can take your wind out, it can discourage you, or you can look at it and say, hey, what can I learn from it? How can I be better? And that's how my mom would treat things. And so I try to do the same thing. When we hit a problem, let's be positive about it. We're going to have failures. It's inevitable. How we deal with the failures is what matters. Are we using those failures to grow and improve? Or are we using those failures to create discouragement and depression?
What speaking of failure and just learning from kind of experience, what do you feel like some of the things you've learned about yourself in these last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, right after 2020, like when you think about the last year, what are some of the things you've learned about your own leadership and things you learned along that journey?
Wow. Yeah, we have to be flexible. Nothing is for sure in life. Well, I'm a faith person, so I believe some things are for sure, but
Right.
most of the areas that we work with in life, within our business, it's not for sure. You don't know what tomorrow holds, and it could be a drastic change from what you're expecting. And so you have to be flexible, you have to give grace, and you have to keep moving forward.
That's good. How do you approach your own personal growth? As a leader, you're responsible for caring for and leading forth, for your team. But how do you lead yourself?
I love that question because I made an intentional effort to try to improve myself several years ago. I found that many of my early successes were due to other people in my life giving me opportunities and taking care of me and growing me and investing in me. But I wasn't spending as much time investing in trying to improve myself. And I realized several years ago, as I was put in a leadership position at our company, and our company started to really grow, I reflected and thought, I'm not the right person for this role. That I don't have the right skills as our company grows. And so either I'm going to have to step out of the way so that someone else can come in that can really run this growing company, or I'm going to have to change and improve. I'm going to have to better myself. And so I made an intentional effort to spend more time trying to develop myself as a leader and a person. And I started reading a whole lot more. I've always loved to read, but I was mostly, before that, spending time reading a lot of just nonfiction fun books.
Yeah, sure.
But I transitioned to reading a whole lot of leadership, business, self-help books, listening to whatever I could listen to, and reflecting and really studying how to become better. And one of the more encouraging conversations I had was a friend of mine, and he's a coworker and a mentor, Carl Cope. He's our COO at the company. I remember one day several years ago, he walked into my office and said, Russ, I don't want to offend you, and I don't really even know how to say this, but I just wanted to say, I don't know what you're doing, but I can tell a difference in you from last year or the year before. And this was maybe 18 months after I had really intentionally started trying to develop myself better. And that encouraged me so much because it let me know that what I was doing was successful, that I was able to help others because I was improving myself.
When you reflected on your own growth and the need that your company had for you to grow as a leader, do you remember what areas of leadership it was? Was it communication? Was it vision casting? Was it a particular element of your leadership that you decided to really grow in, and what did that look like?
Oh, it was probably every area. Okay. Before that, I had spent time, developing technical skills, or, I always think that because of my upbringing and in faith, that I did have a servant heart, but I don't think I had good, intentional, practical skills. So yes, I think my communication helped. I think my wisdom in trying to look at a problem and evaluate it and try to figure out how I could serve and help. It was probably during that time that it really became clear that one of my roles was to remove obstacles. But I was looking at everything I did through a different lens than I had before. And so, yeah, I think every area.
That's really good. Do you remember some of the books or maybe even some of the leaders that had the most impact on you? You mentioned business, you mentioned leadership, you mentioned self-help. Do you remember some of the people and or books that really made an impact on you?
How much time do we have?
Plenty. You're a good mathematician. You're very succinct. And so we got plenty of time here.
Yeah, so let me start with, I read 39 different books this last year in 2020. And I did end up with 3 of my favorites then, and I'll try to reflect back on maybe some of the ones early on.
No, that's good.
But the ones that my 3 favorites from 2020, the first one was Atomic Habits. That was a great book. And, I reflected back whenever I read that book on some earlier times. I used to run marathons. I shouldn't say used to. I'm actually going to run one again this year. It's been a couple of years since I ran one. But I remember the first time I trained for a marathon, and you wake up in the morning and you decide if you're going to run or not. You create a plan, and then you decide if you're going to run. And if you don't run, then you're not improving. You're not getting closer to your goal. And so every day that you miss is really a knock against you hitting your goal. And one of the quotes from Atomic Habits, and let me see if I can remember it, something to the effect of, every choice you make is a vote for the person that you want to be or will become or something like that. Yeah. And so Atomic Habits is really talking about those little things that you do in life that you create good habits or you remove bad habits to help you become a better person. So I love that book. There was many other habit-forming books I read early on. The second of my favorite books from 2020 was Pound the Stone. And I actually read that one with my son. He was in 7th grade at the time, and we would read, and it's a very simple read, and it's kind of in story format. It's really good for leadership in the junior high school age group. And it's about a kid playing high school and him going through various different trials and obstacles and failures in life through his high school career, but he had these mentors which were helping improve him. And I remember my son, even after reading this book, when summer came, he purchased this training thing to help him jump higher. And I thought, he'll probably go a few days and not finish the workout. But he paid his own money for it. And he went through that thing for, I think it was a 60-day program. He did every day, missed one. It's the only one that he missed. And I was really proud of him. But I think some of it was some of the lessons that came out of that.
It's really cool. Did it happen to be a program called Strength Shoes?
I don't remember the name of it.
You're taking me back. When I was in I think it was junior high or something, I was super serious about sports, and I bought these, and I was always short, and so I bought these things called Strength Shoes, and it was remarkable how much it helped me with speed and all that. And so when you said he got a program that helped him, jump higher or something, it took me a long ways back. What's the third book that made a huge impact?
The Power of Moments. And that one may have been my favorite. It goes and talks about, it reflects on, what are the most powerful moments in your life. And if you think about it, many of them are your first house, when you got married, graduation. And what are all of those centered around? Well, they're centered around one small moment in your whole life, but we create these huge ceremonies for those moments. Well, what about everything else? Are we letting great moments pass unmemorable because we aren't intentional about making them moments? And I really loved that book because it makes you think that we do have the ability to create powerful moments in people that change who they are, and that they can reflect on and build off of. But if you don't understand that and you're not intentional about it, you miss so many of those moments.
This is really good. You seem really disciplined. So do you have daily rhythms that are really critical to your leadership or to your success just generally in life? What do your daily rhythms or kind of daily disciplines look like?
Yes, I think I am disciplined, but not the way probably most people think of discipline. When I wake up, this is the first thing that I do, and it happens at this time, and it's a workout for this long, and it's not so regimented. But yes, I have discipline in my life, and I found that when I create discipline in my life, I become a better person. I'm calmer, less stress.
For sure.
Like I remember when I started running marathons, one of the things I decided to do just as a discipline was quit Cokes. And I did it mainly for the discipline part, just to do something and be disciplined about it. And I haven't had a Coke since 2009.
Wow. That's incredible.
So yes, I do apply discipline, but not so regimented.
What would you say is like a daily rhythm that is essential to your own success, whether it's sleep or whether it's nutrition or whether it's, reading or whatever the case may be? Do you have a rhythm that's really kind of essential to your leadership and success?
Yes. So there's a variety. I'm trying to think through which ones. One that I am very disciplined about, I mentioned before, I'm a person of faith.
Sure.
So I read the Bible every day. I remember walking through in the mornings when I grew up, and my mom always had her Bible out whenever. I think she did it on purpose, actually. She would sit in the living room, and I can still see her occasional chair that she would sit in with the little lamp over it, and her Bible that was falling apart. She held it together with a rubber band. We tried to buy her a new one year for Christmas.
She said, no way.
No, she kept her old one because it had all
great.
her notes, but literally kept it together with a rubber band. And she'd be sitting there reading when I walked through to go eat breakfast every single morning. And I found that staying with the Word has grounded me. It's helped me to keep my priorities in place. And I've been through situations that were stressful, and people have asked, hey, are you feeling, huge stress? And I didn't like the word stress. I think I prefer the word compression, that a lot of stuff is compressed in a short period of time. But when you have good, strong, grounded faith, and those are times I would lean more into quiet time, to being around strong mentors, and to reading the Bible and prayer, because then there isn't that stress because you have the right outlook on life.
Yeah, it's really good. You've mentioned people a lot in terms of just influence on your life and people who have impacted you. When you think of, the handful of people who have the greatest amount of influence on your life, who are they, and, what do you feel like some of the major takeaways from their influence on your life is?
Sure. I think the first person when I reflect back, I was asked about that not too long ago when I was going to be talking about mentors to a group. And I was thinking back, who was one of my early mentors? Now, my father obviously is a strong, probably the most influential mentor in my life. But besides my father, I remembered a guy named Bill Green. And he was, when I was in high school, he was actually an elder at our church, but he was just a male figure in the community in Robert Lee. Very wise man and well-respected. But he managed the government housing in Robert Lee, which was also kind of the independent living. A lot of elderly people lived there. And he would do the maintenance and the yard and all of that. So he invited me one summer to work with him. And I think he sought me out on purpose, not to do the work, and I'm not even sure he needed a person, but in order to invest time in me. And I appreciate that. But one of the lessons I remember the most, and he didn't just preach to me, he visited with me and helped me learn things by asking me questions and by observing. So it's burned in my memory this one time when we were trimming hedges, and I was on the back side of a house trimming hedges, and this elderly woman, widowed woman, came to the door, and she had a big old glass of lemonade and a plate full of cookies. And she said, hey, Russ, it was like in June, middle of the summer, probably over 100 degrees. You've been working out here all day. Why don't you come in and take a seat in air conditioning, and I have some cookies and lemonade. And I said, oh, no, ma'am, we're working. I've got to get this all finished. And I just kept going. Well, I think Bill saw that. Well, I know he saw it because a few minutes later he came and got me and said, hey, let's go for a trash run. And these were think of a small town, USA, old pickup truck that doesn't have air conditioning, windows down, an old man with one arm, sticking out the window, and a young high school kid with another, and a trailer full of, trimmings and cuttings from the trees, driving out to a dump. Going 10 miles an hour. He would always make those drives really slow, and that's when he would reflect. And he said, hey, Russ, I can't remember her name, Mary, and she had, lemonade and cookies or something. Tell me about that. And I said, oh, yeah, she asked if I wanted some, but I told her, no, I've got to get this finished. And he goes, He said, Russ, she doesn't have any, I still remember this, she doesn't have any family that lives in town, and And she didn't really have many visitors very often. And you know what? I don't even think she eats cookies or drinks lemonade. Why do you think she made that? And I was like, oh, I guess for me. And he said, well, Russ, what do you think really is our purpose out here? And I said, well, we're, trimming, painting, we're doing all these things. And he goes, but why? For who? Well, for the resident. He talked me through this missed opportunity I had and helped me to realize she had done that for me. And what she needed more than trimmed hedges is she needed someone to sit down and she wanted to love on someone that was serving her, but she wanted communication. She wanted someone to talk to. She wanted relationship. And through that, and he asked me questions until I discovered that. He didn't just tell me, this is what you did wrong, Russ.
Right.
But then afterwards he said, Russ, you have the authority to always serve the person. And that means if you're trimming hedges and they have a need, you go in there. If they want to just give you a glass of water, you sit down and you talk to them, and you don't care how long it takes, because we're here to love and take care of and serve them. And I've remembered that throughout life. It is so easy to get stuck on tasks.
On the hedges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And forget about the people, which is the reason you're doing it.
It's really powerful. Thanks for sharing that. It's, what a profound impact people like that have on people's lives. And school all these years later, you remember that. One of my favorite questions is if you could speak to your younger self, if you could go back 15, 20 years ago, right at really the beginning phases of your own leadership journey, knowing what you know now, what would you encourage yourself, to consider and to learn 15, 20 years ago?
I love this question, and I thought back about it, and I did think of some things I was happy I did know. But then I also thought, what would I have told myself at 20? And I think it's something I already mentioned to you. I would have told myself, invest in yourself and learning how to be a better person so you can serve others better. Because I did neglect that early on. I wasn't reading books on how to be a better leader. I wasn't learning about what skills I had that were good and which ones I needed working on, and how to serve those around me better.
What are those things that you did learn? You mentioned there are a couple of things that you did learn that you're glad you learned. What were those things?
One of them, and I think it was in one of your other podcasts with maybe Dr. Jones, he said, I think it was him that said one of the big foundations is make sure that you put your wife first. I think he was the one that said that, spouse first, because you could be super successful in business, but then if you don't have that strong relationship and you're not retiring with someone after 50 years of marriage and have this great relationship, then you've lost it all. Yeah. My dad early on would always tell me, Russ, you're going to have to pick your priorities in life. And he said, mine are God first, family second, and work third. And he would instill that in me. And so I think early on I did create those priorities. I did put God first. I did put family second and work third. And knowing my personality now, if I hadn't been told that and I hadn't listened and I hadn't applied that, I could easily let work consume every aspect of my life because I love work.
Yeah. You mentioned a junior high son earlier. Is that do you have multiple kids or?
Yes, I have 3 children that I'm super proud of. My oldest is a marketing major at LCU.
Okay.
My second is a senior. And so she's about to start college.
Wow.
I'm about to have 2 in college.
That's
Actually,
awesome.
My oldest is even engaged. She's getting married this summer.
That's
I cannot
cool.
believe I'm old enough.
That's great.
And then my youngest, he's now in 8th grade.
So what did you do to intentionally kind of safeguard and protect your kind of mind and heart as related to work and success and driving the organization? Because if you've been kind of the president for 10, 15 years, working in this fast-growing company, that is the exact same track as your children, going from elementary to junior high to high school to college. And so what did you do to safeguard and to protect that time?
My wife helps me a lot there. She'll remind me if I'm spending too much time at work or I'm missing opportunities. I do work a lot. I'll go in early. I'll work sometimes in the evenings after my kids are even in bed. I'll work sometimes on the weekends. But if my kids have an activity, I take off and I go to that activity. And I expect my employees to do the same. So when my kids when my daughter had a volleyball game, I was there in the stands. When my oldest daughter went to state and cheer, I was there. When my son has a basketball game, I'm there. But then we also try to create moments. I think back to that book, and my wife and I have been even more intentional this last year to create moments with our kids. But as an example, with my son, we build things every summer together. And so I'll take off work and we'll build various different structures or things together. And what better time than spending 4 days building like a gazebo swing set in your backyard, or we spent a couple of months this summer building this ridiculous chicken coop, which looks more like a mini house in our backyard together. But we learn together and we build together, and it's time. My wife has always said, it's not about, people say, time with kids. It's about the quality, not quantity. Mm-hmm. But my wife has reflected and said, you know what, you can't always create quantity, but you can create quality and design that quality so that there's quantity moments in it. Mm. And so we've tried to make sure that we have time as a family.
That's really powerful. I love that. We've chosen to travel. I find it difficult not to work if I'm here, meaning at home or in Lubbock or whatever. And so we bought a motorhome. Yes. We've never so much as owned a tent. And so we just picked up a motorhome about 3 years ago, and it's traveling has been like the most remarkable thing ever. I mean, just as you were talking about those quality moments, I think of where we, when we did the polar plunge in, Yellowstone in early June last summer. Oh, it's like the coldest thing I've ever done in my life.
Oh, that is awesome.
My son and my daughter, first of all, they were a lot tougher than me. Our daughter, she beat us big time. She didn't even so much as, gasp for air, and the rest of us were hightailing it out of there. But it's really powerful what you said. It's like not... it's really good, the quality. And I love how you keep coming back to these creating moments, and they don't have to be fancy, it could be anything, but you're creating these moments and these intersections in your life and your child's life.
You mentioned travel, so that reminded me that years ago, my wife and I also didn't want our kids going off to college and being on their own without understanding a more global world and how blessed we really are. And so we decided to intentionally let my wife take one of our kids, or 1 year. So their junior and senior year, we wanted to take them overseas to, an area that is not like the U.S.
Right.
And so, my oldest daughter, my wife took her one summer, and I took her the next summer. And then my middle daughter, I took her junior year, but COVID hit. So we didn't get to take her out of the country this year. But we created these times where we could spend one-on-one time, but let them grow. And wow, you could see a difference in my oldest daughter after she came back from Africa. She went there to serve girls that were her age that had been in horrible, no families and where they were being abused and used into this environment. But yet they worked all day. But yet they were so happy. Yeah. And she's like, they have nothing, and they feel blessed and happy. And we have everything, and usually, we're not. So creating those opportunities for them to see the world in a much bigger.
I love it. It's so good. Russ, thanks. You've been generous with your time. Thanks for sharing all that, and a lot of it's so personal. So thanks for being on the podcast today.
Well, I really appreciate it. I've loved your podcast. I've loved listening to them. So.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.